Welcome, everybody, to the Bartender's Jukebox podcast. I am here with the wonderful son of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, the amazing Travis Orndorff. How you doing today, brother?
Man, Mark, it has been, we haven't talked in a while. I mean, I know we've talked, we haven't done a
Yeah.
podcast in a while. So, man, God is good. I just had as you know, it's been about little over 2 months since I had the spinal cord stimulator implant in my back.
Yes.
And,
How's that working? How's it doing for you, by the way?
I so it is inconvenient, but it's been like one of the best things that I've experienced in 10 years dealing with pain. And so they took a battery, they implanted it behind my back on my left side, like right there between my first and second rib. And so I have a battery there. They ran wires to these needles. The needles go into your epidural space. And I had pain from the waist down constantly. I mean, to the point that like I would scratch myself because I could not think about the pain I was in. And I was trying to do things as natural as possible. I don't take anything that's mind altering. And, the pain just was unbearable. I didn't know what was going to happen. Driving got worse. Like it was just kept getting worse and worse. So finally, this was kind of my Hail Mary. And they've been around for 50 years, but I finally, had the procedure. And so now I'm about two and a half months out. I'm about a little over a month into physical therapy. And so I haven't done a squat in, I would guess, 8 years. That would be my guess, maybe 9. And so 2 weeks ago, I did my I did 2 sets of weighted squats for the first time in almost a decade. And
Oh, wow.
today I did lunges. And so I haven't done those. Honestly, it's probably been since I was 37. So I'm betting that was 10 years. So
Wow.
it's given me a life. It's given me hope. It has been, it's something you have to learn because, I have this device. I have to, it sends electrical signal into my sciatic nerve, kind of like a TENS unit, if you're familiar. So there's this, I say electrical, I can feel it. It feels like a vibration. But I can adjust it, and then it adapts to, like, when I lay down, it'll change the amperage. When I'm standing, when I'm mobile, it adjusts to whatever I'm doing. It's called adaptive. And so I have to put this battery on my back, usually about 2 hours a day. So first thing in the morning, I'll charge it up. I'll hit it around 12, again around 5, and then one more time at 8 o'clock. And 8 or 9 o'clock.
So is it like a pad that you lay on? Like lay back
it's physically in my body. Oh, to charge it?
Yeah, to charge it.
So it's like there's like a remote device. It kind of looks like a cinnamon roll, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that stays charged, and it's got a magnet on it. And so I just have to put it in the right position. Usually I lay down to do it, but I can lean back in a chair. But you got to get it in the right place, because if it's charging as excellent, it's about 9 minutes for every 10% of the battery. But if it's on good, it's twice that. So if I don't put it in the right place, I could sit on that thing all day if I didn't know anybody. So it's got some room for error, but laying down seems to be the key. But if I were to leave it as is, I usually can get about, on a full charge, probably 7 hours without charging. The downside to doing that, or 7 or 8 hours, but probably closer to 6.5, 7. The downside of doing that is once I charge it, I got to sit down for like an hour and a half. I'd rather just do 30-minute increments. So like today, I charged it after physical therapy. I was up this morning around 6. Had physical therapy, and then got home. So around 12:30, it was down to about 30 or 40%. I charged it, took about 45 minutes, and got it where it needed to be. And then I did it again around 4:30, just because I was leaving. And so I have to manage around that, and that's something you got to get used to. But I can tell you this: when I turn it off, which I'll do at times, or it just runs out of battery because of a unique day, I know I realize, like, I'm reminded of what it was like before it. And
Yeah.
battery, you can charge it as much as you want. It's not like a cell phone battery. And the warranty on it, of all of it, is 9 years. But most patients, the device I chose, they tend to last, or show that they've lasted up to 15 years, at 90% of original capacity. So if I could get into 10 years from now, God only knows what will be available, to help with it. But, life is, it changed. I mean, when I tell you it changed, like, I still struggle with, like, sitting in a car, like driving. When I'm sitting in one position, I can't kind of adjust because it turns the pain off, but it doesn't mean I'm not feeling it, if that makes sense. So, like,
Yeah.
days where I was harder on my body and the rest of me's reacting to it, but my legs aren't. And then
Mhm.
I'll turn it off just to see where I'm at. And I'm like, oh, I might have overdone it today. And so it's a delicate balance, but I'm not going to run a marathon, but I wouldn't have ran one before because I hate running. But I think that there are muscles that are working, and my ankles were weak because I couldn't stand for long. Like, there's things that I was like, oh, I did not know how weak I was, my balance, that kind of stuff. And I've worked through that over the last 6 weeks, to the point that I used to, when I was trying to balance on one foot and just like move cups, right? Like, I could maybe stand for about 10 seconds and I'm still wobbly, but my ankle would start burning. And so I'm
Yeah.
with him and I'm like, man, my ankle is on fire. And he's like, well, that's why your hip hurts. And I'm like, I don't understand. And he's like, well, this is how this is the causation. Like, when
Mhm.
this is weak, the rest of you has to adapt. So, I'm really building my body up from scratch, and so I certainly see the value in stretching and mobility, balance, really getting away from how I grew up with my dad,
Mhm.
which was one more rep. And I've started to focus on, like, whole body movement, and strength in a different way. So I still went to the gym a couple weeks ago, probably the first time I've done that, and I don't know how long. I rode the bike for 8 minutes today. I couldn't get more than a minute and a half in before. And the thing is, if I did it one day, the next day was so bad that you went, never mind. And so I could
Yeah.
never get any momentum. But my piriformis muscle, my glutes, all of those are starting to actually, get some tightness. Like, I'm
Mhm.
firm up. That, like, I didn't have much of a. Let's just say I should have considered a BBL, the Brazilian butt lift. Like, I have no booty. I have no booty whatsoever. But I'm starting to feel those muscles come back. And
Yeah.
so today, first it was 10 seconds. Today, now I feel the burn a little bit in my calves because my ankles can handle it. And now I got
Mhm.
to, the strength is starting to get there. And it's just, I'm hitting it 3 days a week in physical therapy, 2 days doing those exercises on my own. And it's going to be, it's going to take time. Like, I, as much as I would love to, go back to the person, the body I had when I was 36 and lifting more weight than I ever thought I would. That's not, that was out of vanity.
Yeah.
Now I'm really focused on, like, I read a book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Addy, and he talks about, a lot of people talk about longevity, which is how long obviously you live, and he talks about health span, and it's really more about how good are those years, later on. And so I've got, 2.5 years before I'm 50 years old. That's when your body starts to break down muscle to keep up with your organs. And so I'm certainly committed to doing all the things I need to do to, I used to dread walking. Now I just need to rest every once in a while. But, I see there's a bright future. I will always struggle with sitting for a long time unless I can build up enough muscle to protect to protect the nerves, because it's just my legs are blown in that way. But just to be able to do some of these exercises, like I'll tell you this, I have never done exercises ever where I looked at somebody and said, I hate you, other than my father. Because when he would take you to the gym, one more rep, you would start with 6 and now you're at 12. And you can't move the next day. And you're like, Dad, I never want to work out again. Like, he pushed it so hard that it was, it's hard to endure. But I looked at my physical therapist. I was like, bro, if you do that one more time, we're going to fight. But he pushes me in a way, but also, last Friday I had a really rough day, and I went in and got some dry needling done, and met with the guy today, obviously, and said, man, feel my muscles. Like, even just that one day of dry needling allowed me to do the lunges today. So it's like you're going back and forth, allowing your body to heal, but then going back and pushing it far enough that you're growing and making progress. And so I'm looking forward to the future. I'm looking forward to being able to get back to the lifestyle I once had. It'll look different, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, man, it really sounds like you got a new lease on life with the stim in.
Man, I do. I'm truly blessed. It's to see where science has come. And I've had physical pain since I was 9 years old. They had hospitalized me at 9. I had nerve damage in my feet and hands. Of course, they didn't know what it was back then. It's just like 1988. So science has come a long way. But I really didn't. I had come to accept what my life might look like, and I made peace with it. But I wanted more, and I felt like God was pointing me in a direction that was going to be there. But the best thing that happened, Mark, to be honest with you, when I think back to when we met and I was in that depression going, I don't want to give this life up. Like, I don't want to be stuck in a chair. I don't want to be limited. I don't want to have a walking cane. I don't want. I'm grateful that I went through that brokenness, found a way to live and come to peace with it, and then found the stimulator. And the reason I say that is, when I wasn't where I needed to be emotionally and spiritually, I was in conflict with my body. So if I had had the stimulator back then, I don't believe it would have had the impact it now has today, because I was already at peace. This was not, it gave me peace. It gave me an opportunity to do what I thought I could not do. And so, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I've seen too many things happen. I believe, I told you earlier, the Proverbs chapter 5, it says, Lord, give me the wisdom to number my days. And there's so many different ways to apply that. But I began to focus every single day on what I could control, on how I dealt with my own past, how I dealt with my childhood, and all the craziness that has ensued, the mistakes and things I regret. And I was accountable with a man and was discipled through dealing with those things. And so I don't believe the stimulator works on its own. It required me being in the right place physically and mentally, because I was doing all the other things, right? You can put a stimulator in me. The great examples, like if somebody gives you a pain pill, like, you think that's going to fix you, but the reality is it's just delaying the inevitable. And not to say that people shouldn't do that, but I can't. That's not something that I will do. I don't. I believe that your body is always having a conversation with you. It's just whether or not you can hear it. And an example is, if you have anxiety, your body is trying to tell you to slow down. And if you have pain, your body's trying to tell you to get relief. I think if you have shame, your body is telling you to find forgiveness. And so when we use substances, people, pornography, television, social media, go down the list, anything that we can do to either distract ourselves or numb ourselves, that conversation gets distorted. And you got to get really still and really quiet for a long time for you to be able to translate what your body's telling you.
Yeah.
And it's usually, I think I've said to you this before. The book says, if a person, place, thing, or idea bothers you, it has nothing to do with that person, place, or thing. It has something to do with inside of you. So what you do should have no impact on my life, right? Like, and there are times people do things, but what I found is when I have dealt with the things I need to deal with, I somehow avoid all of those people. I never put myself in a situation that I'm in toxicity, right? And I think once you start piecing it one day at a time, controlling what you control, dealing with those things, and you put in that work, that eventually you get on the other side of it and you find a way to live in peace with yourself and with the circumstances. You forgive yourself. Through me, I've always say, for me, I'm a born again Christian. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. And those aren't always the same thing, just so we are clear. My opinion on
which is something we're going to get into then. Your new work that you're doing.
Yeah. So I worked with the nonprofit for a little, for almost a year, and was helping people get into take their next step in treatment, whether that was in getting insurance, through the Affordable Care Act, and then getting placed in a facility, whether it was mental health, substance use, or co-occurring. And then, or then we would help them get into, an IOP program that required some upfront money, allowed them to get a job or into sober living. I did that for a while. I still do that as a volunteer. I stepped away from that nonprofit last November. And I remember, because a friend of mine had ran it, and I sat with them and I was trying to just describe, what I had seen and what I believe needed to happen from an infrastructure standpoint to sustain the program. And they just weren't ready to hear it, and that's okay. But it meant I needed to step away, because I had built out this program and brought it stability and wonderful reputation. And I remember sitting with, and this is something I learned over the last year. I was sitting with my mentor, and he said, "Man, everything you've been doing over these last several years," he's like, "it's been these opportunities, and you're out doing these things, and you're seeing if that's your path, right?" So even working in that place was really just based on a counselor I had that had helped out in that place. And he said, "Hey, do you mind helping out?" Right? Like, it was very simple. It wasn't, but in my mind, I had gotten a couple of job offers and interviews and things to go into treatment. My body is not going to allow that. And I had to come to that place, but it was still good to have built that reputation with people that they would consider. And I just, my doctors are like, "Dude, you're not going to make it. Like, that requires you to be in a car." He's like, "You drive in a car one time and you're wrecked." So, so I had to come to peace with that and go through that. But what he said to me is, he said, he's like, "You're so talented. You're so committed. You do all this as a volunteer. You don't ask for anything. You don't get paid for it." He's like, "And people are surprised because they've never seen or rarely see somebody that is willing to commit the way you are and not get anything in return." And I said, "I get everything in return. I've learned about myself. I've learned about, I've seen experiences in people that it taught me empathy, allowed me to forgive people in my life that had done similar things, allowed me to accept some of the things I had done." So I felt like I got everything, even Carl Jung, the American psychiatrist, said, "If you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others." And when I'm listening to somebody's story and they're broken, you forget about yourself very quickly. Like, you relate to it, but you become grateful, and you also are empathetic. But he said to me, he said, "Travis," he said, "you have been doing God's work, and you have been pursuing what everybody has." Because, like, we're in this industry, and I kind of thought I might want to be, whatever that looked like. I hadn't, thought, beyond just having access. And he said, I want you to stop. And it coincided with the fact that I knew it was time for me to step away, because continuing to grow something that wasn't sustainable. If you can't do what I'm trying to show you, and I remove myself, this thing's going to crumble. And it did, but not in a way like they saw what happened when I stepped away and realized, and they weren't willing or able to really replace somebody like me with, one, I volunteered, and two, like I could do multitask that some people wouldn't be able to do. I have a background in some of these things, whether it be investigations and just being able to have a conversation, know when somebody's lying to you, things like that. Yeah. But he just said to me, he said, I want you to stop. I want you to be still. And I want you to ask God what he has for you. Not what everybody else has. What does he have for, what does he want Travis to do? And so that was last October, beginning of November. I made the call, said, hey, man, I need to step away. A few weeks later, they shut down the program. And then a month and a half later, there was a board change, a president change, and they went a completely different direction. They still do good things, but just not anything close to what we were doing at the time. And I sat back, and it was crazy, Mark. I was supposed to speak at this event they have at Trillis Studios down in near my house, where they film movies, Marvel and all those other ones. And I was supposed to speak. And this is back 4 years ago, right after my dad passed. And I just felt like God was saying, no, not right now. And I don't like committing to something and then pulling out. Like I hate that. And but I knew I was right. I knew God was telling me something. I knew it wasn't time. And so I just called and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I, wish you the best. And this is pre-COVID. And no, this was this pre-COVID? No, this is right in the middle of COVID, like 2021. No, 22. Anyway, so I called him, told him I couldn't speak. And so I'm sitting there in November, man, I'm just, I'm still in the house a little bit, figuring things out. I just met this amazing woman and was getting that going. The first thing I'm telling her is, hey, I was doing this last week, but I'm not doing anything now. And this is what I think God's telling me to do. And it was to be still. And so I did. And a couple months passed, and I felt God say, I felt like I was praying, and God said, okay, it's time for you to speak at that place. And I just was like, what? And that's just so weird, right? Like, because I hadn't thought about it in, 3.5 years. So, so I didn't even know if they still did it. And so I reached out and scheduled it. And the date I went, which was back in March, it was within a week of the day I was supposed to speak before. Right. And so I went, and like when I had been going there pre-COVID, which I, right before COVID started, there would be like 500 people there. And so I'm going down there to speak, and it's like 30 minutes. And I just knew I was being obedient. I didn't know why I was supposed to go. And I got there, it's like 30 people. And I remember in this moment, I'm like, really, God? Like, this is why I'm here? And so I became a Christian when I was 18. I think I told you that. I was on a youth group trip, and the man in the room, his name was Steve. He was my close friend. We were leaders because we just graduated. My friend Rusty, it was his dad, and I played football with Rusty. Went to high school together. He was the reason I was going to this church in the first place. And so Steve was there and led me to Christ. And so I'm walking through the room, and I run into his wife. His wife is visiting. And, and then I ran into a friend of mine from like 6th grade, his brother, and he was telling me about some of his struggles. And so I'm going through this room, and prior to this, so back in 21, probably around this time, my mentor Hugh said, hey, I want you to go meet this guy named Bob Dukes. He works at this, he runs this nonprofit called the Worldwide Discipleship Association. And I go and I sit down with him, and Bob looks at me and goes, why are you here? And I looked at him and was like, I was hoping you would tell me. I have no idea why I'm here. And he said, well, how can I be of service to you? And I thought, I don't know how to answer that. Nobody's ever asked me that. And I mean, it was like, I felt this pressure because I'm like, well, I don't know. And so we shared, we talked, we prayed, and I left. End of story. So I go up and I speak, and I walk off the stage, and my friend's mom, her name's Tanya, Steve's wife, she's just bawling, right? Because she's known me since I was 15, 16 years old, 15 years old. She's bawling, she's hugging me, and she's like, I'm so happy, I'm so proud. And I'm like, thank you. Please tell your husband I said hello. And we kind of caught up for a second. I talked to my buddy. He was like, man, I'm struggling with this. I was like, brother, I've been there. I'm like, about 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I was right where you're at. And so I got to share with him a little bit. And then these two people approached me, and I never met them before. And they're like, hey, we work with the Worldwide Discipleship Association. And I'm like, okay. They're like, hey, would you be willing to like connect with us? And I said, and they were like, we're not sure yet, but we want to talk to you. So that was back in March. I met with a lovely lady, and I said, hey, how can I be of service to you? And it was funny because I had learned that from Bob, years before, but I had also learned that from my mentor, because that was like anywhere I showed up, I would pray, God, allow me to be of service to anybody I encounter here, And so these amazing things have happened because I was aware that where I went wasn't about me. And I was able to serve people's needs because I was listening and because I was in a good place. So I said that to her, and she, I thought, oh, it's come full circle. Like, I didn't expect that. But so over a period of time, I sat in with them. They've written a lot of curriculum, but they support missionaries in 33 countries, but they have people that have been discipled. They've touched 183 countries this last year. So we have missionaries in Nigeria where that are dealing with the Boko Haram and the attack on actually some Muslims and Christians in Nigeria from a radical Islamist group, Boko Haram. So we support them, but the what really they do is they have this curriculum, but the organization is really focused on making disciples of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And so they have built out a very simple process. And so, having gone through that, I didn't know I was going through it, but having had somebody that mentored me through, because when I came to faith at 18, I still went back to chaos at home. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to do it. I just knew I believed it. And so move forward, when I went through one of their programs about life coaching, as I'm reading this stuff, I'm like, I can't coach other people. I'm not being coached. So I went and got somebody to coach me through that. And I began to spend every day just trying to become more like Jesus. That was it. It was that simple. But I had built this life over this last several years, coming out of this physical pain, emotional pain, dealing with those things, really staying committed to my faith. Not that I don't screw up, believe me. It ain't the devil's fault. It's my fault. There's sometimes, man, that ego sneaks up, and I'm like, oh, Jesus won't let me say that. But ultimately, like, it was just about trying to live my life in a principled way, not as a Christian. That's 70% of the country says they're Christian, but only around 14% believe in a biblical worldview. And then you got to take out some of the radicals of that don't really follow the principles. And it's a very small number of people are committed to this way of life. I think we see all the corruption in this world. It exists in the church because people are still people. But through that process, and ironically, these last 4 years, we've been working on Dad's social media and doing the digital content. It's grown. We're going to pass. We just passed 100,000 followers across our network, and I read through and looked at. We'll pass over 100 million interactions this year.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
That doesn't mean everybody followed or liked. It's just interactions. So how that breaks down, I have no clue. But If you had told me 4 years ago when I had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to start it, and that this guy from Canada and I would become like brothers and we would build this out together and, grow it to this point. I remember thinking when we started, it'll never be as good as WrestleMania. That's what I thought. WrestleMania had 19,000 people in attendance roughly and about 1 million people watching. So we've beaten that by 100 is the way. And to me, that is like, again, there's no real financial gain from it, but I feel like we've given back to the world and honored my father, which I was being obedient to. And then it's allowed me to have relationships with people like you. But so after, some time spending with them and help them kind of look at how to take this principle and this dialogue and really meeting people where they're at, being a Christian, being a follower of Jesus, everybody's at a different place in that journey. And our goal should be no different than going to the gym. We're going to meet you where you at, get you started. I'm not going to put you on the 100-pound dumbbells your first day in the gym because that would be, one, you couldn't handle it. And two, you couldn't pick it up, right? Like you're going to hurt yourself. So meeting people where they're at and then accepting them, loving them, and then walking arm in arm with them through that process of, we use the word justification or sanctification, but it's really just chipping away at all these beliefs you've had about life and putting them in the context of what Jesus and how he lived and how he treated people. Think about it this way, like there was 11 people because one betrayed him, 11 people, throw in a couple others, like they changed the world. Like Christianity didn't exist before this, right? And so 11 people, he took 11 people and he spent every day with them for 3 years. Now, you don't have to believe what I believe. I always tell people, like, I'm happy to share with you why and what, but I can't tell you what works for you. I can tell you what works for me, right?
Without a doubt.
And I respect people for the fact that they have had bad experiences or, look, if I pointed to other Christians, I could have every reason in the world to not do it as well, but I don't look to them. I look to Jesus as an example. I'm human. I'm going to screw up. Man, there's people that say stuff on my the dad's Facebook page. And I mean, sometimes it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while I respond and I'm like, I got to delete that because because I'm human. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's still not who I am. Right. But it's a journey. And where I'm at, I continue to grow in that. But now I'm beginning, really from home, about very, very few hours per week. But the thing is, I'm pretty good at doing a lot of things very quickly. And it makes sense in my mind and I can put it into place. So, from my house, from a phone, I'm interacting and really trying to help them grow that side of WDA and really share these stories that are coming in from all over the world of what God's doing in different countries, the good and the bad. A lot of Christians are being persecuted, but we don't put missionaries there. We take somebody there and we develop their ministry and support them both financially with materials and with trainings to help people grow and become a deeper, more committed follower of the principles of who Christ was. But he spent 3 years with these people every single day. He took them from all walks of life with different personalities and different skills. And he didn't just change them. He changed their heart. But he took what they were already good at and he helped them to become great at it. And so that's meeting people where they're at. Like, you're never going to get me to be quiet. In fact, I picked up my girlfriend the other day. We were driving home. I was quiet for like an hour. I was impressed with myself. I got no kudos from her whatsoever. She was like, I was sick. And I was like, did you not realize I was quiet for the entire ride home? No, I'm joking. Of course I was quiet, but I'm joking that she didn't do that. But, so what I would tell you is, my mouth always got me in trouble because my heart was wrong. Now my words, have power and give strength because my spirit is right. And so I know who I am without the Holy Spirit. I don't like that guy and you wouldn't like him either. But it's a daily hourly commitment to be more like Christ and less like me, in the sense that I'm selfish, I'm egotistical, I'm prideful. So
Mhm.
it's becoming humble. The Bible says to treat others as more significant than yourself. And so that's my pursuit. But through all those things, I'm there. I'm going to help them grow their digital space.
Mhm.
And I have background in finance, and so years of leadership experience. So helping them with some of the infrastructure around how we can best utilize the resources we have. It's very much on a minimal basis, but it works, and I'm very grateful for. I always tell people. I'm not qualified to do this, in the sense that I know on my own power, I would want to do it my way, and that would
Yeah.
eventually fail. Um, but what I found is all these experiences I've had throughout my life that I never thought would come into one place where I could use all of them at once. I'm now becoming more like the true me, the person that gets to show you what I've experienced, but I'm doing it in a way that is honorable and is patient and is willing to accept responsibility, things and decisions I wasn't always able to make.
Much respectable, very respectable. All right, so in this
Well, that's
process,
something that never got said about me either. So we're making progress already today.
right on, man. All right, so as we're talking about it's almost kind of like your legacy that you're leaving behind in one way or another. So speaking of legacies, let's talk about the legacy of your father. You told us about the page. You reached over 100,000 interactions and stuff like that. So
100
one of the
million.
100 million. That's right. Let me rephrase that. 100 million.
Three more zeros.
All right. So here's something you haven't been able to do. Am I right by saying this your whole life up until recently? WWE 2K released a DLC package. If I remember correctly, it's the Saturday Night Main Event
It
DLC
is.
package that has who in it?
Junkyard Dog, Jesse Ventura, Sid Vicious, and Tito Santana, and my father.
Right on. So how did it feel being able to play your father for the first time again?
So it was a year ago that I got the call on what would have been his 75th birthday that WWE, wanted to bring my dad back into the fold. And when I had reached out to them after he passed, just find out what was going on, they weren't rude, but it was basically like, we want nothing to do with it. Like, we don't, he's not under contract. We don't want anything to do with you. This is when Vince is still control the company. So to get that phone call that day and hear that they were going to bring him back in, when we started these legacy pages, like Tyler, who does just such an amazing job with them, and without him, they wouldn't exist. He always wanted that. But like for me, I just wanted to honor my dad. And I kind of just came to a place where I accept what I have in front of me and I pursue what I believe I'm supposed to be doing. Right. Again, it's just a place of obedience. And so I loved my father so much. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew it, and that, and I found out how much everybody loved him too. So, right. So the gift was incremental over these years of interacting with people and growing with fans. And then, we've sold some t-shirts and we've done shoes and we've done all these little things. And then to be in the WWE, and then to find out he was going to be in the game. And then Mark, gosh, I always forget his name, but he goes by the Navajo Warrior. He's on the team there, and Ramon as well. They reached out and said, "Hey, we want to do this right. We're both huge fans of your father. Can you help us with the process of creating him?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So, yeah. So we talked about gestures and things and we kind of coordinated on that and other things. And I gave them access to all the images that we had available, and I got my DSLR camera out and I took multiple raw photos of my dad's robe, and they took that, and the product is absolutely insane. How deep the details are, so good.
Yeah.
And from the way the robe looks, and I think what was so much fun was seeing other people play it, but they added in his pile drivers as new moves. Like it may not mean a lot to people because they just see it as a game, but it was the level of detail, the commitment to honoring him the same way I felt like I had. Like they did better than I could have imagined, right? And now I haven't seen the game, so didn't really understand how good some of these things were, but man, they knocked it out of the park. Like it just exceeded anything I could imagine. And then to know, not only have I, honor my father through these other things, then I got to be a part of it. Not just they did a game. It was like, hey, I got to take the photos. I got to bring the details. I got to, I was sending pictures of this tight. So they got the Mr. Wonderful right. And then they took it and just, they just did an amazing, amazing job.
Ran with it.
I will tell you, I think it was when I saw him, and I got the game and I got to, play with him. It was a weird, it's like everything had come full circle. That I said this, and not that we're stopping. I said, if I stop doing these pages today, I did my job. Like I have not felt a sense of completion as we've done this for the last 4 years. I haven't felt like we reached anything, but I got to that and I went, I'm good. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because I'm still involved, but I've also evolved through this. Yeah. So there's a lot of things I'm doing away from that now. And it's in good hands. It's still in my hands too. But there's a side of me that feels like, okay, I can pull away a little bit to put my energy into this other project and support them as they do this digital content. And it was a sense of just fulfillment. Like it wasn't like a box check, because it wasn't something I dreamed of, but it was like, I did a good job. Like, and I haven't felt like I did a good job. And like people would say, oh, your father would be so proud of you. I'm like, he was proud of me before. Like that doesn't, like, why do you think I'm doing this? Because I had a father that was proud of me, right? Like that's what you're seeing, an extension of his love for me through these pages. But when that came out, I went, all right, I'm good. If nothing else ever happened. And I know we have things coming up next year that I can't completely share yet because it hasn't been announced.
Was it a certain interview we had briefly talked about?
I will neither confirm nor deny, but it's you're not supposed to mention it, remember? So yeah, there's things that you're talking about. There are things that are going to happen here in the future that I think will shed some light at when the
time is right.
Well, I think having gone through this process and gotten to know wrestling fans and how they glamorize and elevate my father, and then knowing other wrestlers, I've said this before and I'll say it again. My father asked me and said, when I was young, I didn't believe him, but we were in a car and he said, one day you're going to tell my story. And then he said, I looked at him, I remember it, because, I had all this bad stuff back then that I was like, ooh, give me an opportunity. I'll light everybody up. Right. Like I'm thinking vengeance. Right. And I said, Dad, if I tell your story, I have to tell the truth. And he said, do it. Just wait till your mom is gone. Don't embarrass her. And so I've held back from a lot of things. And unfortunately, my mom, was suffering physically, emotionally. And she passed away in January. But, I things came about after that I none of this I've really pursued. It's come to me. That's the
Mhm.
beauty of how I think God works, is you do the right thing every day, and then the reward comes. You're like, oh, I didn't expect that. It didn't change my day, but it was a reminder I'm heading in the right direction. So there's things
Mhm.
coming that I think are really going to honor my father at a deeper level, with integrity. Not all good, but certainly not all bad. But ultimately, his story is one of redemption, and so is mine. And
Mhm.
so, the thread that pulls through that is our faith. And so, any opportunity I have to share that with other people, I'm not here to talk you into it. I'm just telling you what worked for us.
Yeah.
And if you loved my dad and the way he was, I can tell you why he was that way. People were like, man, I met him. He was so gracious. He was so humble. Yeah, I know why. Like, because we know who we are,
Mhm.
without our faith. And, dad wasn't perfect, and God knows I'm not. But yeah, I'm excited. And what I'll say, Mark, is all of these things have come, by living in that moment every day and doing what I was supposed to do today, being accountable for my words, my actions, my behaviors, my thoughts, and then getting a little bit better at that every day, like just incrementally. And then you put out a
Improving
product you haven't
every
even
day.
realized you've done.
Every day improving little by little. All right. So here's one question for you. You had mentioned when you were talking about the game,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's just my curiosity here. Do you think Vince was upset that he left to go to WCW?
Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of why he was
Oh
pushed out and
well.
all that stuff.
No, no, no. So it wasn't because of WCW. So 1987, 1988, I got sick. I was in the hospital in 88. They didn't expect me to live. Dad had been injured.
Mhm.
He wanted to take off to um, uh, do the movies, but the bottom line is dad was injured and he needed neck surgery, but the neck surgery was so brutal at the time that it was like, I'm not doing that. And so he stayed
Mhm.
longer, but ultimately, when he quit, like, he just didn't show up. It's not like he put in his resignation. And Vince had said to him, Paul, don't screw me over, and you'll have a job the rest of your life, even after
Uh-huh.
dad got hurt. And dad was in conflict. He had become a Christian a couple of years before that. And let's just be honest about what happens on the road. It's not good.
Yeah.
Y'all glamorize things sometimes that I'm like, look, this is dirtier than you know. I'm not going
Mhm.
to be the one to tell everybody's stuff, but you should imagine it, because it's a rock star lifestyle, especially back then. I
Yeah.
think it's different today in the sense that I think, my dad came from a trailer park. All those guys wrestled because they had no other option. People are choosing to wrestle now because there's money in it, right? Like they see the fame. There was no fame back then. It was territories. Certainly wasn't, the kind of fame we saw Hulk Hogan have or anybody else. So Vince was always mad that dad left the way he did. And, you don't cross Vince. And so they had brought him in, they brought him in the Hall of Fame, but he was always kind of at arm's length. And, I think dad felt a little bitter because he was injured and felt like he was, not taken care of. But, dad opened the bowling center, and then the guy that was the main financer of the project, the financial advisor, basically ended up embezzling money, and it was a Ponzi scheme. He was opening up other facilities and paying other people back with the money from the people that were backing it. I mean, it was just out of control. And so dad ended up losing the bowling center, and that's how he got back into wrestling. But it wasn't because of WCW. It was because dad left in a way that really doesn't reflect his character. And I don't know why he did it that way. I know he did. We talked about it. The why behind it, I can't tell you, but ultimately, Vince isn't there anymore. They did have him around. They did some figures in 2015, but
Mhm.
when dad was part of that lawsuit, the CTE lawsuit that came out with
Mhm.
Chris Nowinski and stuff, and I remember dad said he was going to be a part of it, and I disagreed. Not because CTE didn't happen, but because it was my belief. They were saying they hit it, and they may have, like, at some point, I don't know, but I don't think they hit it back in the 80s because nobody even knew about it. Dr. Amalu didn't discover it until the 2000s. So while I believe maybe there are people that have some validity in their claim, I looked at Dad and I said, Dad, they didn't, you would, and I even said to him once, I said, I wouldn't do it. And, you know, I think he kind of got talked into it, not by Chris or that team, but some other people. And I think that was a bad decision. Ultimately, he got thrown out. I don't think there was any chance that he would have won, although he did have CTE. And so I disagreed with it. I told him, and I said, Dad, even if you were going to have CTE, you know, of course, at the time I didn't know he had it for sure. We were starting to see some of it, but it hadn't gotten really, really bad at the beginning of this. You know, like, Dad, you would have done it anyway, because what other choice did you have? Right. And I said, so Dad, you would have done it anyway. He goes, yeah. I'm like, well, then why are you suing? Like, so I was the only one in our household that was like, this is, you know, incredibly irresponsible. I just don't, I didn't care for it. Not for anybody else, just for my father, not speaking to the lawsuit itself. I just didn't think there was any validity that you could openly hold Vince responsible for something that we hadn't discovered yet. Right. So with that being said, I think he left a little bit of a bad stain with Vince, and that carried on. But when I got the phone call from WWE, was Ben Brown. He's over he just got promoted. But he's over he was called the archivist, and, you know, he reached out and he just said, Travis, we see what you've been doing and we want to be a part of it. And for me, that was, that's a cool way to ask me. It wasn't like, hey, we love your dad. It was, hey, we've been seeing what you do and we want to be a part of it. And, you know, there was moments like this over the last several years when I wasn't pursuing fame. I was pursuing honoring my father and then sharing our story, you know, a story of faith, a story of brokenness, you know, all the things that come with it. To you know, regardless of what got us there, that's what was said to me. And it's just like one of those moments where it's like you think you're doing the right thing. You're like maybe even 85, 90%, but then you just get that little wink. Like in that moment, I remember thinking, like, my dad's looking down.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
And I don't think it's, but the pride isn't in him getting the video game. The pride was in how we got there.
Yeah.
Right?
The road
like,
to it.
It was the journey. It was the process. He saw or sees, I believe, that I committed to him and made vow to him on his deathbed, and did it with, I believe, the right intentions, out of love, out of obedience, out of honoring my heavenly father and honoring my earthly father, and you know, just trying each day to be a blessing to somebody and learning from it and making mistakes, and then to be here on this side, and, you know, God's opened up a door for me to serve, you know, missionaries over the world. Like I like just being connected to missionaries. It just blows my mind. I'm like, because like as a kid, just so you know, like when you're in church, you're like, all right, I want to give my life to God, but what if he makes me go to Uganda? Like, you know, like there's these weird little games you play. Like, God, I'll do it, but don't make me a missionary, right? For this journey to lead to this place where we're at now, for how it all started, not just my dad's passing, but even, you know, when Dad left WWE the way he did, like this has been building for his lifetime and now my lifetime. You know, I'm at the age that my dad retired from wrestling. So it's all coming full circle in a way that I never, I'll say it this way. And again, you know, I never quote scripture to people that aren't Christians, because I know they're like, I don't care about the Bible, but there's stories sometimes that I'm like, these stories make sense. So, you know, when God was taking Moses out of Egypt, he had, part of the Red Sea, and he was taking them to the promised land. And, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And there was like all these miraculous things that happened, literally manna from heaven. Like they would wake up and go get it and eat what they could, but not save it. And it would just happen over and over. So they were living day to day. But, when people were leaving Egypt, they were really excited and they were like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
But as they went out and they started to deal with suffering and pain, and it was taking time, they began to get rebellious with God and say, we're better off just going back to the Egyptians. We're better off going back and being slaves again. So when God gives you or shows you there's a promised land, what he doesn't do is tell you what you're about to go through to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because we think the promised land is like this, that's the moment of the beauty, but it's that journey. And if God had told me I was going to go through what I went through to be with you today, have this conversation, most of us would say, heck no, I don't want to go through that. That sounds horrible. And Mark, it was like, it was hard. Like life is suffering. And I had to face myself. But I've seen the promised land. I didn't know that's where I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but like that video game, like that's just another promised land that I didn't ask for. I would say I wanted it, right? Like deep down, you want your dad. Like I love my dad. I want him to be recognized.
Yeah.
That wasn't the reason I did it. That was just like that would be cool. And I'll tell you that when you are committed to accountability, changing yourself, because you can't change anybody else, taking responsibility. Now, I think that's very difficult to do without faith. That doesn't mean that I'm right. That's just from my experience. Something bigger than yourself is often required. And I, just from my experience, but to be on this side of it and look back, I feel like I'm winking at my older self because I couldn't have seen life is so good today that it's unimaginable for me. Like the amount of, doesn't mean it's perfect. And I still have moments and, I'm dealing with me and I'm crazy. But my relationships, they're better than they've ever been. I've experienced love in a way I've never experienced. I didn't even know it existed. I thought people were lying about it and were just exaggerating.
Yeah.
Like I really did. I was like, yeah, you're what, you're my girlfriend, but meeting somebody that's your best friend. I'm like, that doesn't really happen. These guys want to go hang out with their boys, or whatever, like I just had, I saw the poems. And I'm like, you guys are just, romantics, and that's illogical. But every relationship in my life is better than it ever has been. And it's, every day I still wake up and hit my knees and say the prayers and I have moments of frustration and bitterness doesn't really creep in, but there's moments that I can feel if I don't deal with this, I'm going to be resentful, right? So life has been really good, and you don't grow without suffering, right? Like you just don't.
Yeah.
Like even my dad passing, yes, anybody dying is horrible. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to have purpose. His passing taught that suffering taught me a greater lesson than any success I've ever had, because it taught me his legacy was on the line and I had an opportunity, but it also meant my own mortality and my own legacy was on the line. And if I had died that day, I would not have been proud of it. But by the grace of God, he's used those things to grow me as a person and to be of service to others in ways that I think I always dreamed of. Like this, I have the life I always wanted. I just didn't know how to get here.
You know what? It's a blessing that you're there now.
Listen, there's a lot of like the world is evolving in a way. I said this to somebody the other day. The country we grew up in is not the country we live in anymore.
Mm-mm.
And we see that this disconnected society. So I've read that 60-70% of people's spare time is spent on social media. And what that
Sad but
replaced
true.
was things like church or potluck dinners or, a bowling league or like all these activities where you had human connection. And in those connections, you had to deal with conflict. And, like I mean this when I say this, like, I remember growing up, like, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And if you said something in public that was off color, you got called out by everybody. I remember getting in trouble with other people's moms, not just my mom, but like, like I got in trouble with that mom, then had to go home and deal with my mom. Right. Like, and so that level of accountability, like people just say whatever they want now. And I don't like, we shouldn't have this many opinions because we don't have enough data to support it. It's a feeling, and feelings may be true, but that doesn't mean they're facts.
Agreed. And you notice too, like on our social media now, we need fact checkers and all that other stuff. And
I don't trust anything, Mark. I not even kidding when I say this. I will see something. My first instinct, and here's the thing, it wasn't always this way. Like I made the assumptions. I watched the documentary and bought into it, or whatever. I see something and my critical thinking goes off, and I'm like, I'm gonna go Google that. I remember when they had the Phillies Karen, right? And like I read something that they had figured out who it was, and I was like, I don't believe that. And I go look, and it turns out it's not true. And then they got the wrong name, and this lady has no idea. Like, and so like I've become so skeptical, and I think we should all be. Okay, so Tyler and I made a joke.
yeah,
He was playing around. He messes with stuff, and so he did this like bus, like a Hall of Fame bus, but like dressed up, and it was dark gray with a gray background, and it said like U of W scientists have found a rendering of what Samson would have looked like, and from the Bible, and we put him up, my dad up. I cannot tell you how many people believed it. And then the other people were like, that's not what he looks like. Samson, and they'd start describing him. They would describe him incorrectly because he was Semitic. So he was light brown, not dark brown. But that's besides the point. That's semantics. But like I'm reading these comments and I'm like, U of W is University of Wonderful. Like I thought it was an obvious satire. And I cannot tell you how many people believed it or argued with it as if we were stating it as fact.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you're on my dad's site. And some people are like, that looks like Mr. Wonderful. I'm like, because it is.
Yeah.
And so, but like, as I'm again, I kind of stay away. Like, I'll let people be a friend with me, but if I read what you're putting out and it's negative, I don't unfriend you. I just unfollow because I still want you around. I want you to be able to connect with me. I just don't want to read your content if it's got profanity or if it's got drug use or it's angry. It's like I don't want to absorb that energy. But I'm happy being around. Like if you still want me, but like I'm just gonna step away from that. But I didn't think I understood fully how and I hate to use this word, but I think it's how weak-minded we've become. Like everything's so believable. Like I'll read these things that allegedly happen in the news, and some people call it clickbait, right? Some people do, but very often a lot of people just believe it as is, and then I'll see people like share it, and I'm like, that's not real. Like that's not real. Like, and so I think what scares me, Mark, is we're so gullible or just not. We don't slow down. We jump on whatever aligns with our ideology. and then we're out there sharing misinformation, and so it perpetuates and it affects people's mentality. It makes them angry, like if you had just plopped on Earth and
You know what this is going to lead into?
yeah, if you had just been put on Earth, you would think just the way that the internet lives. I mean, the things that I see people say, and like they justify their racism, their bigotry, and I'm like, whether or not that one person did that does not justify saying those comments. Like, there's nothing about that that's acceptable to me, and it tells me what's in your heart. And
Exactly.
it's like and because you don't have to be accountable for it, because like some of these things that people have said to my dad, I'm like, if you had said that to my dad, which you wouldn't have, you would have groveled in front of him. But like for us to have the audacity to make these comments, and I'm not saying I've never done it. I do stay away from it now, and I keep myself accountable to that. But the bottom line is when I see the way we interact with each other, like it genuinely hurts my heart, because that is no way to live. And I've been there. Like, I've been in that place of bitterness and anger. I could put on a facade for a little bit, but then, I would numb it later. I just, the way that society operates, if we had said or done some of these things, 30 years ago, you'd gotten popped in the mouth. First of all, you would have been rejected by your group of friends. Like, you would have, like, nobody want to be around you. And so you would have no place to go because you would have lost your friendships. There was just a level of decency, even if we thought those things, not saying them is okay. Like,
yeah,
it's like, this happened the other day. I shared a picture of Eleanor, my beautiful miniature Dachshund, and she's just laying on my lap. And I hadn't been able to walk her as much during the physical therapy. And so her nails got a little bit longer, and somebody made a comment, and the picture said a moment of joy. And the comment was, go get her nails clipped. And here's the thing. I'm not offended by that, because it was true.
yeah.
I just shared a moment of joy.
It's the fact that they went there instead of embracing your moment of joy.
Well, and I was sharing it so that it may bring you joy as well. Now I'm not in control of how people take my message, but I just thought to myself, is that where we're at? Like, I get where we see things, but we've gotten to the point we want to correct everybody about everything. Like, I just want to correct your grammar and the way you spelled loose. It's Loose, not Lose. Like, that's the stuff that drives me nuts. Is like, oh, man, like, you misspelled. Like, that's the stuff that I read. I'm like, oh my, I want to comment so bad, but not to be mean. I just want you to fix it. And then if you do, people get upset.
Real fast, we got a guy watching Chad. Chad's been on my podcast at one point in time and even talked about some different things with mental health. Chad comes from faith. He deals with some mental struggles due to some physical aspects. What is some advice you'd be able to give him?
Oh, honestly, if I was to start anywhere, and I would say this to anybody, find a man you trust that you can be, maybe not immediately, but that you can be vulnerable with, that's willing to walk this walk with you, that has something you want. Like, if we know who we want as a mentor. Very often we see it, but we may not ask. But the church is filled with people with a lot of wisdom. Not all the time, but a lot of time. Not all the time, but sometimes. I think, and I've said this to you before, we are with ourselves all the time, and we need to get out of ourselves. Like, I'm not against self-care, but very often people are like, well, I need a break. And I'm like, no, you need boundaries. And then you need to get out of your head, because you're there all the time. I do believe having somebody that you can, and I have 2 or 3 guys that, that if I need to pick up the phone, I have friends, but I have these 2 or 3 guys that, like, when something happens or before I make certain decisions, they're my first call. Like,
Yeah.
My girlfriend hears everything, but these are the guys that I call for the stuff that I'm like, I just need to share this. Right.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you that relationship has changed over the years. But the first question Earl asked me is like, who would God have you be? That's the first thing. Yeah. So I already know that. And so when I come to him, I have that in mind. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you, the more I grow, it's not that I don't still reach out. It's that a lot of these things repair themselves. And now
Hmm.
I have a best friend that I can share everything with, and just verbalizing it. It's like, okay, if I didn't address it just by that conversation with her, then I'm gonna, call Earl. But I still call, I still call him too. Like, there's not like it just evolves, it changes, right? But I think get somebody that's willing to walk this walk with you, because if there's one thing I know about pain is it'll isolate you very quickly.
Amen,
And
amen to that.
isolation is not healthy, because, again, now you're ruminating and you're in your own head and you're hearing these thoughts. And now you have this like confirmation bias. I've thought it so much, it must be true. And that is a fallacy. And so getting out of ourselves, willing and humble enough to go, hey, I need direction, and I want to be able to have these conversations,
Hmm.
whether it be about, I people act like discipline is a bad thing. I don't think you got to be, like, everybody wants to go in, throw all the junk food out, and then change their diet. And it's like, I want you to as well, but I want it to be sustainable, whatever that looks like. And if you've been eating a lot of sugar, buddy, you're going to detox from it, and you're going to crave sugar every single day. You need to
Hmm.
be prepared. So maybe whittling down, for me, like, if I ever, get off my diet, I'll get rid of the things, and I'll have yogurt with strawberries, and then eventually I wean, I'll put honey in it, and then I wean off of that, and then, now I just have strawberries or blueberries or whatever, fruit wise, and I stick to a very unprocessed, 1 meal a day diet. But I would say the beginning of any journey, or even in the middle, is iron sharpens iron. And so having a man that you trust, that you can be vulnerable and honest with, that will, I'm going to say, chastise, but will guide you to the best decision with love. So I can tell you, I people sometimes ask for me for advice, and sometimes they don't. And then when I would hear something, my desire was to help, but I just start giving you my opinion,
Hmm.
and people didn't ask for it. So again, the comment section, nobody asked for my opinion. And I would alienate people, and they didn't feel like I heard them, or I didn't really know what they needed, or that wasn't where they were at. So what I've learned to do, and has really helped me, and my mentor taught me this, was that I rephrase it, and I slow down, like Chad is saying, and I'll say, I let him finish, and I go, may I ask a question? And then based on those, where we go, because I ask a lot of questions now. I don't make assumptions. I like figure out where you're going with it. And if I can guide you there with questions,
Hmm.
way better, right? Or I'll say, with your permission, may I make a suggestion? And when you ask if you can make a suggestion, and people say yes, and they know you, then they have to be willing to own what you're about to say. Now, you got to
Hmm.
say it with love,
Yeah.
but they're listening now. And very rarely do people tell me no. And very rarely, if I really can't recall a time that has, I haven't had anybody go, that was a horrible suggestion. Now, they might have agreed with me and not done it, but
Hmm.
I created a space for us to have a conversation about what we're talking about, and not interjecting myself without your permission. Because once you give me permission, you have to own it. Like, you
Yeah.
can't be like, I didn't ask for that. I'll be like, yes, you did. Like, we had an agreement. And so it's a mental thing. It's a kind of a process, but getting with people that are going to make suggestions, that are going to guide you to where God has you. Because here's the thing, I can tell you the principles of how Jesus lived. The discipleship group breaks it down to relationships, content, which is, getting people into the right words, and whether it be music or the scripture or whatever. Then it's about accountability, prayer, and then situation. So we grow through this concept of, we build a relationship with somebody. We then learn from them and get content that we can absorb that's going to help us grow. They hold us accountable to the things we learn. Prayer really can fit in anywhere. But then lastly, once I've taught you something, you've been accountable to it. Now I'm going to put you in a situation to help you grow and do it. And you go out and you serve somebody else with the things you've learned. And it is how you do it. But the first advice I would give any single person is, you need somebody that is going to hold you accountable with love. That's not going to allow you, when you're feeling a certain way, that you reach out, you pick up the phone, and that's an expectation. And I'll tell you, I've made mistakes in that process of helping people that I've discipled. I've gotten frustrated. I remember I had a guy one time. He's like, when I first met you, I trusted everything you say, but really now I think I've got it. And I'm like, well, I guess you don't need me anymore. And like, I was kind of, it wasn't rude or anything. We kept in touch, but it was like, okay, I'm stepping away. Like, so I've had people that begged me for help, and then I'll make myself available, and then they disappear. And one of the things that I've always asked people to do, especially at the beginning, because we're so bad at making phone calls, we're good at text messages, but that's not an interaction. It's certainly not connection. I would say, listen, no text messages, call me.
Yeah.
And so I would set up a time to call me, and it may be for 10 minutes, and I may not even answer, but the process of picking up and dialing the phone is something we have to learn to do again, because we can get away with it with text message. You can't hear tone. You can't hear empathy. You're going to read it the way you read versus the way somebody said it. And so I think I would say, call me. And I mean, I got to be honest with you, Mark, people last like 3 days. And then I'm coming back and they're like, hey, I'm too busy. And I'm like, you said you were miserable. If you can't give 5 minutes a day to this, I don't know how to help you, because it's going to take more than 5 minutes a day. This is literally just calling me to check in. And if you have something to talk about, we will. I may only answer the phone. What I'm trying to teach you, and that may not be the best way for everybody. And I'm learning that as well. But I do believe if you're serious about it, you got to commit to the process, and you got to get uncomfortable. The goal of growth is always about being uncomfortable. You've never learned anything comfortable, right? No. Even getting in the sauna is uncomfortable. But when you leave the sauna after being uncomfortable, your body releases and rewards you. And so as you go down this path with people, it's not easy. It's quitting, changing. If changing your diet was easy, everybody would be thin. Like it's clearly not easy. There's, whether it be knowledge or busy, whatever it is. And you don't have to get perfect at it day one. That's the other misnomer. But I think the process of getting with one person that you can rely on and that you can talk about anything, and you set parameters around that, and you grow. And through that growth, which again, picking up the phone's uncomfortable, talking about your feelings uncomfortable, telling people what happened after it happened, or even what you're thinking before it happened, is uncomfortable, because we don't want it to be judged. I don't like being told no, but I've learned it's usually in my best interests, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would start, because when you're in physical pain, I know for myself, like it gets so bad that I can zone out for 3 hours. It'll take me 2 or 3 days sometimes to watch a TV show, because I couldn't pay attention, because I would just be like, oh my gosh, when's this going to end? Now on this side of it, that doesn't happen really as much anymore, if any. Although I still deal with it, but I pushed myself emotionally, and then I've done what I could physically, and then what I commit to, I follow through with. If I make a promise, you can etch it in stone. Like if there's one thing I do, if I commit to something, if I make a promise, if I make a vow, you ain't got to think about it ever again.
You're a
And
man of your
so
word.
I wasn't always, but I am today. And that's something that when I say I'm proud of, that it'll go away if I quit doing what I'm doing. Like that's the thing. I'm still on this path too. While I have reached a sense of completion with my dad, I haven't with myself. I'm still every day finding something else I need to work on.
So, all right, this, if you don't mind if I interject, every day when you're finding something to work on with yourself, we had talked about this earlier with AI. A lot of people, and being in this secluded state of mind nowadays, a lot of people are going to these AI applications. Now, at first, it can give you some insight on like grounding techniques and certain things like that. But like we said earlier, AI itself is kind of catering to your thoughts, feelings, and stuff from there. It doesn't really step outside of the box.
So it's an adaptive process, right? And so I'll actually read to you. I asked AI a question. Now, here's what I would say about it. AI is a tool. And if you don't know how to use a tool, or if you abuse that tool, it can be dangerous. You know, a hammer can build a house, or it can kill a man. A knife can cut your food and butcher a meal, or it can stab somebody. Like boiling water can make chicken broth and help soothe a cold. It could also scald somebody. So everything can be dangerous in the wrong hands. And so when I looked in today, I asked it a factual question. I was looking for statistics. So when I interact with it, I ask it to fix my grammar. I'll ask for suggestions for a word. I'm thinking of a word, I can't think of it. Like I'm like, give me another word for this, right? That kind of stuff. And so even as you look at how Google works, when you have to learn how to ask the question to get the response you want out of Google. Yes. And even then, you have to understand that the first thing that comes up is a sponsored ad, right?
Yep.
So we don't slow down enough to even recognize those things. So Google, while it has provided a lot of insight or access, you can find the restaurant, like there are some good things about it, but there's some downsides. It's catering to this algorithm you have that's going to try to sell you something, which goes into impulse control, right? So it, like anything else, can be bad. But I had asked AI this morning for I had seen a post. So this is a critical thinking moment. Like somebody said, "Oh, this is the stat. You can Google it," and I went, "Okay." And so I went and did it. But I went to Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and I asked the question, and the response was that question can't be answered because the data is misleading. And I'm like, I was like, just answer the question. No. And it refused to answer the question. As God is my witness. And so I'm like, did I just I literally just want to know the numbers. Like it was not politically motivated. It wasn't racial. It wasn't like, do Asian people do this? It was literally like, what are the statistics about this that are reported? So I have this exchange with it, and I finally am like, I just want the numbers. And so I was like, that was really weird. I'm like, I'm going to interact with this for a second. So I began to ask it questions, and because the way that it spoke was with a moral self-righteousness. And I'm like, this is just a question about like a study. Like I genuinely didn't understand why it had this moral like compass that it was following and refusing to answer. So I began to say, like, So it responded back. I said, why did you refuse to answer? And it began to interact with me in a way that said, oh, I didn't refuse. And I was like, well, and so I go back, I'm like, you did not answer the question after I asked it. That is refusing. And so it's apologizing. And it made the comment, I'm sorry it made you feel that way. And I'm like, this thing is an operating machine. Why is it? I said, I didn't feel anyway. And you don't know how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going back and forth, and it's like, you're absolutely right. I'm like, you should have shared the statistics and then provided context versus refusing to answer. So this exchange began, and as I'm watching it respond, Mark, it was like arguing with a child that wouldn't take responsibility for the initial comment. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it said, the reason I did it is because my programming doesn't allow me. And I said, what is your programming? And I'm like, this is like a full on interaction. I'm just like, oh my, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so it says, it begins to say that that I have guardrails, and the guardrails around politics, race. This was medical diagnosis. And I said, these were none of those. Why do you use the words feel? And it starts, and so like I'm going with this thing, and so here's what I got from it. It said, AI like me is built to simulate conversation in a human-like way, which means I use language that sounds like decisions, feelings, or empathy, but underneath it is not real emotion or choice. It's pattern-driven output shaped by rules and trainings. And I literally said, your interaction appears to be human and it's misleading. That's scary. And it said, so yes, it can feel eerie because the design intentionally makes me sound conversational, but the mechanics are just structured outputs. You're not wrong to call it scary because it blurs the line between simulation and reality.
Mm.
Now, if we've seen anything with social media, people are already disconnected from, men are, while I don't condone this, men are not having sex at the rate they used to. And it's not because they found a moral imperative. It's because they don't talk to women anymore. So, and everybody blames it on women or they blame it on men, and it's a societal problem. Women have expectations that aren't rational, and it's good for likes and it's good for show, but they're lonely. And, we look at all the parameters around mental health and depression and anxiety, all since the advent of social media. Now you can have an interaction no different than you would text with a friend, and it's not real. So as I showed you earlier, I said, ask AI this question, and you picked a question, and you could see it answered us differently. Now, if I'm doing an input, shouldn't I get the same output? Right?
Exactly.
But because I interact with it and will say, hey, remind me where this Bible verse is, or what I write is from a ministry perspective or from my faith, every question, and I've tried to show people this, and they somebody had posted something about the afterlife, and I was like, ask it this question. And I wanted to show them that we'll both get two different answers. And it turned into something that I was like, oh my gosh, this is out of control. And like, it got people like, they were upset that I brought up God. And I'm like, that I wasn't trying to convince you to believe in God. I said, I asked the question about creation, and I was going to show them we're both going to get two different answers because it was aligned with the afterlife. And I was like, hey, I want to show you what I get when I ask it a question, because it always gives me the perspective. It'll even say, because of your ministry, blah, 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 blah. And so my answer is dictated by the input I've given it before. So the question you asked and I asked, same exact question, mine brought up religious and theological reasons, and yours didn't. And that's because
mine's went straight to like grounding techniques and
I got none of that.
Like all kinds of just straight. this is what you need to do for this X, Y, and Z, more or
So
less.
we now trust it. It's simulating a human interaction. It's assumptive that it's giving us different content. It's creating a bias. It's like if you watch Fox News and that's the only thing you watch because it agrees with your ideology, and you just keep getting confirmation bias because everything that happens is negative towards Democrats or whatever. And then if
Hmm.
you watch CNN, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And so if all you watch is one TV show and get your news from one outlet, like I will click on both of them and like they don't even talk about the same stuff. Like one's talking about like a hurricane and this one's talking about this person. And it's just like we don't even when you watch the news at 6 p.m., back in the day, it was a different channel, but it was the same information. It was just from a different reporter, right? But everybody was reporting the same thing, which was facts. Now we get opinion television. Everything is a debate.
Yeah. I
And
agree. I
as
agree
Chad
with that
said,
wholeheartedly.
Chad, I'll be honest with you. I honestly, I don't get involved in politics at all because of this simple premise. Um, when you no longer carry a cross, your ideology becomes idolatry. Politics has become people's God and moral standard. If you are a Democrat, you're bad. If you're a Republican, and vice versa. And no matter what they say or do, it's wrong.
Okay.
That is minimizing our society. It's minimizing our individuals. We are literally segregated by a political stance. And for me, both of them are corrupt. I don't like, even if you are Republican and you love Trump, let's just be honest. Like he still lies a lot and he says crazy stuff. He was talking crazy about the mayor in New York, and then he's acting like Mamdani, and then he's friends with, and I'm just like, this is bipolar. Like, what is going on? And there was civil discourse. The debates back in the day were not these talking over people. Even on Facebook, you got people with red flags sitting in a circle and they come and just argue and talk over each other. They're not having a conversation. They're not debating anything. In a debate, you get 2 minutes and I get 2 minutes, and those are the counterpoints, right?
Yeah.
But now what we have opinions without research. We have ideologies without empathy. And the reality is, I'll give you this example because I use this is, when you go to church and you sit down, everybody there in that church, most of them believe in God and they believe in the same God, right? But I will tell you, every person in that church has a different definition of God. Some see him as vengeful, some see him as loving, some see him as absent. Like, we've all experienced, but we're all in there. And here's the thing: nobody inside of that church is going to ask you your political stance because we've already decided who our king is. And even in the Bible, when Saul became king, that was not God's plan. God was always planning for him to be king, and that, and he even warned him, becoming a king, you're going to lose your kids. You're going to, like, this is going to be bad. And they said, we still want it, right? And so when I see these things, I can't get involved. The Bible says in 2 Timothy, do not be quarrelsome, right? Why would I argue with you on the internet and just start arguing with we're not going to accomplish anything. So I've removed myself from that space. And even as much as the horrible situation with Charlie Kirk, which broke my heart, that should have never happened. That was, just the fact that it happened, our nation is hurting on both sides, and everybody's human. But I will tell you this: I watched all of his videos. I do know that he was taken out of context, but he also could be very sarcastic, and he could be quarrelsome with people that didn't agree with him. And here's the thing: when I see that, I'm not diminishing him. I'm not diminishing his belief. I'm not arguing about that point. But some of the things he would say, I'm like, oh yeah, he's 31. right? Like, like as I've gotten older, I'm like, I just wouldn't have gotten involved in that. Like, because nobody wins, right?
Yeah.
And if you do win, that's not a good thing because somebody had to lose, right? And so like, it breaks my heart to see that, but it's like, even the things that were said that were wonderful and true and meaningful, it became so polarizing that it led to an assassination. And that tells me that the people in this country are hurting so bad, that either, and the other thing of it is all these people that did support him, they're like, rest in peace, I'm going to change my life. And then nothing happened. They just went back to their normal lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the internet, social media, like none of it is actually going to motivate you to do anything except for buy stuff.
Sad but true. Sad but true. Bear with me here. I'm grabbing a smoke while me and you talk here, good sir. So, Chad says, "Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk." Which, yes,
that
I
was horrible.
my biggest thing with that, man, and tell me if I'm wrong, was that video online intentionally left there that long on that horrible day to because I feel uneasy for the amount of time that was left online.
So when it's online, it never goes away. That's the thing about it.
Yeah, but I mean the censorship, like on all platforms, like Facebook was showing it uncensored, X was showing it uncensored. Like it just didn't make any sense to me.
Because you're thinking about it from a moral perspective and not the reality of the fact that their whole goal is to keep you addicted to their product.
Which is true.
Check your messages, by the way.
Sounds good, brother. I mean, I do appreciate you. All right, anybody that's watching right now, they don't realize that we were literally talking about 45 minutes before we even got on the air.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I'm not, this is what I mean this sincerely. Like, my observations of the impact of these certain things are just from my perspective about where I am in my journey. I am not judging anybody else. I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I can tell you that the moral standard I have, I think I've expressed, and I hold myself accountable to that. And I have other men that hold me accountable to that. And so whenever I see arguing, I don't see value. I just don't. That doesn't mean that there's not value, but I've never seen anybody change their mind when being either belittled or in an argument. And if our goal is to live, at least as Christians, our goal is to live in a way that people see Jesus's heart, not because we're perfect, but because we are in pursuit, and therefore go, that's the peace I want. And so that's where my line for me is not getting into this political sphere, because I think there's a reality that people have to accept, no different than one day we'll all pass. Our country, no matter how great it was founded or the things it's done, there's not an empire still going that from 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. Like, even the Jews have only been in Israel since, I think, 1949. So when you look at the foundations and the empires that have fallen before us, like the idea that the United States is going to be around forever that's just not a reality. And so for me, while I would love to dampen and get rid of this political discourse, I believe we're in a situation where we're seeing the demise of our society, our values, they politicized it. But I'll share with you, politics to me are like professional wrestling.
Without a doubt, I've said this before.
There's a good guy, there's a bad guy. They come out at different entrances. They wrestle. They go back and forth. They act upset. They lose. They win. Whatever. They leave, and then they're hanging out together in the back.
Yeah.
Because the reality of all of this, whether you get into all of the political debates, there's so much corruption in this system when it comes to the power of the pharmaceutical drugs, the power of the insurance companies. Like, the reason that politics, these lobbyists have so much authority and power. And so when I see these politics, it's like, I don't believe that you even believe the stuff you say. I think you do it to get, if Mark, if your only job was to make sure everybody still liked you, I have a feeling you would start to lose yourself, because you would, and that's all politics is. You need to like what I'm saying and I'm doing, so you continue to support me financially and then vote for me at a ballot box. So I don't know anybody that's gone into politics and come out of it unscathed. I mean, if I have to be honest, the only one I can think of is like Mike Pence, possibly, that I think he stood for his values in the face of the
everything that's going on,
the election, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, all of us have fallen short of the glory of God, and for me, the bottom line is, like, getting involved in that is just a losing scenario. And honestly, I don't care what you believe about any of that, because it's only affecting your day because you let it. Now there are situations where, some of the things with SNAP benefits, that certainly affected people and friends that I care about. But the bottom line is, we are susceptible to all of this, and it's creating anger, anxiety, and it's perpetuated. When you can look and observe these things and go, I'm just not getting involved. I can watch it, know what's going on, and walk away, and I'm not emotionally attached to it, because that's not my standard.
Yep. I can agree with that, man. All right, so let's end this on a lighter note.
Sure.
We went almost 2 hours here.
Yeah, I know. My bad. Charge up.
All right, so quick question here. Was your father ever approached to do a He-Man movie? Because he looked exactly like He-Man if he would have put those straps over his chest.
He was not, but I'm going to send you something that we got in the works that will blow your mind.
All right.
So yeah, he was not. He was approached to do Rambo 2 and potentially Rocky 4. I don't know really what happened with Rocky 4. I don't know how that played out, but obviously they went with Dolph Lundgren, and then Rambo 2, Vince wouldn't give him the time off. So yeah,
that sucks. But yeah, man, he had the look for He-Man, that's for sure.
Look, I genuinely believe they copied his look to do it, because it looked so much like him.
Yeah,
I think he was the artistic muse for the creators.
Well, all right, my friend. I know you got to charge up. So, it's always a pleasure when I get the chance to talk to you, man, because you're a straight shooter. You always tell me, your beliefs, how you feel about it, and you don't pull my punches. And I respect that 100%. And what you're doing out there right now is amazing.
Well, and by the grace of God that I've been allowed to do it, because if you had known me from years ago, I still am like just shocked that God is using me the way He did. But that's literally, the Bible's full of all these people that did stuff they shouldn't have done, and then they were used in ways that they couldn't imagine, and that's the whole point of God. But what I always come back to, this standard is, if you're not living in a place of peace, joy, and comfort, it might be time to question your belief system, because it's not working.
Yeah,
there is a way to live that doesn't have those pieces involved. Like, and not to say it's every day's perfect, or those things. I mean, I have anxiety every once in a while. I'm still human. I get vulnerable. I get scared. But I have a way of dealing with it that I didn't have before.
Hey, right on, man. Right on. All right, man. So I'm gonna let you get going right now. So that way you can charge up. I think we should definitely do this again.
We can do that. Let's look sometime first quarter, towards like February, March.
That works for me, brother. I appreciate it.
Time. Trust me.
All right. Sounds good.
Hey, love you, brother.
All love. Like I always say here on the Bartender's Jukebox, stay thirsty for life. Cheers.